For years. That is the price of power. After endless isolation and brutal training, Karen finally steps out of the door. He leaves the shadows behind. But he walks straight into a nightmare. The world is not as he left it. It is teetering. A civilization on the brink of total collapse. The preparation is over. Now, he moves. The air and TV tasted like rusty iron. Unrefined manna. The distinct scent of desperation. Erhan walked beside me. His steps were heavy on the cobblestones. He looked at the shadows stretching between the buildings like they might bite. He still fought like a noble. He believed there was a line between the light and the dark. A line we could choose not to cross. I knew better. That line was erased the moment we stepped out of the carriage. I wore the mask. I played the servant. A petty deception. Erhan wore the fine cloak, looking like a man trapped in his own skin. He hated the authority I forced on him. He asked why I took the lower station. He worried about suspicion. He didn't understand the rules of the gutter. Down here, the servant holds the knight. The master is just the target. We were simply blending into the chaos. We met our contact under a dying street lamp. Julio. Scarred skin. Dead eyes. He bowed. He claimed a debt to Xeres from decades ago. Loyalty is a rare currency in the black market. Usually worth less than gold. But Xeres knew how to bind men to him. I accepted the service without gratitude. In this life, gratitude is just a precursor to betrayal. He led us to a safe house. A room hummed with expensive magic, silencing the world outside. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. I needed a name. The explosives used to ambush me weren't common tools. They belonged to people who sold instability. Julio laid the facts bare. 2 groups controlled the black powder. The Kerr group. Old money. They were trying to wash the blood from their hands. They wanted to be legitimate. They were cautious. Then there was Caligo. Former slaves. Men who chewed through their chains and found that violence paid better than freedom. They had no reputation to protect. Only a hunger for profit. Then came the smoking gun. Kodo members were seen leaving the city earlier that day. The timing was too precise. They moved to intercept us. They failed. They retreated to their hole. The logic was cold. Her had too much to lose. Caligo would burn the world down for the right price. Erhan hesitated. The weight of the names crushed him. He asked where we would go. I smiled beneath my mask. The answer was obvious. We go to the ones with nothing to lose. We go to Caligo. While I hunted in the filth, the High Lord sat in velvet. My uncle and grandfather, safe in the ducal estate, nursing wine that cost more than a commoner's life. My uncle laughed. He revealed the truth they had planted. That he used his authority as a shield to move alone. He called me a wolf. My grandfather stared at the amber liquid in his glass. He noted my age. 13. To him, it was a limit. He spoke of genius like it was a fragile flower. He was wrong. I wasn't a genius. I was a survivor reading a book they were just opening. They feared Teed. They knew the city was a cancer where merchants bought kings. They thought the chaos would swallow me. Then the mood shattered. A name dropped onto the table like a stone. Sir Mason. The unyielding shield. An 8-star knight. My grandfather's face went pale. An 8-star knight is not a man. He is a natural disaster. A walking apocalypse. His presence changed the weight of the air itself. They realized too late. The board was far more crowded than they thought. Back in the alleyways, I stood before a quiet building. It looked like a library. A polite facade for the violence beneath. We entered. The smell of old paper couldn't mask the scent of steel and sweat. 2 guards in heavy plate blocked the way. Big men. Confident. Used to crushing the wheat. They told us there were no customers today. Orders from the chairman. They didn't ask our names. To them, we were insects. Just something to be shooed away. They told us to leave while they were asking nicely. I looked at the steel on their hips. I felt the hum. Adrenaline. I miss this sensation. The moment before the talking ends and the blood begins. Erhan tried to mediate. His voice shook. He unmasked her. He slipped. He forgot the roles. His fear broke the mask. The guards sneered. They saw a frightened noble boy. They taunted me, asked if I planned to cut them down with the toy at my hip. They wanted a show. They wanted to break something pretty to pass the time. I sighed internally. They gave me no choice. Perfect. Erhan, I said. My voice flat. We are moving to the second plan. Erhan stared at me, eyes wide in the gloom. He repeated the words. He searched his memory for a plan we never discussed. A strategy that didn't exist. Before he could ask, I moved. I didn't draw my sword to threaten. I drew it to end the conversation. The guard saw the flash of Manhwa. Too slow. They always are. They rely on armor and size. They forget that speed is the only armor that matters. I closed the distance in a breath. The second plan was simple. Violence. Immediate and overwhelming. Erhan would just have to catch up. The negotiation ended the second I got bored. Talking is a waste of breath when the other side isn't listening. The guard stepped forward. He trusted his plate armor. A rookie mistake. Armor is just extra weight for a man who can't track true speed. He stepped into his range. He blinked. That was his failure. Before his brain could process the flash of Manhwa, I was already inside his guard. I didn't kill him. I just shattered his composure. And his ribs. Erhan was slower. He hesitated in the rain. Watching the violence unfold, I moved to the next target. Efficiency is the only metric that matters. The second guard swung a heavy blade. He screamed something about a cursed sword as my edge bit through his steel. I didn't correct him. In a fight, truth belongs to the one standing over the body. Erhan finally joined in. Clumsy, but effective enough to keep the rabble off my back. I mocked him. He needed to learn. Violence isn't a suggestion. Once you choose it, it must be absolute. We had the momentum, but they had the numbers. I needed leverage. I grabbed the nearest guard, yanked him off balance, and buried my blade against his throat. The rhythm of the battle snapped. A brawl became a standoff. Let's play hostage, I said. My voice was calm. The man in my grip started shaking. Then, a voice cut through the downpour. Not a soldier. Someone used to giving orders. The guild leader of Kalaga walked out. He was flanked by elites, wearing a face full of fake concern. Young wolves, he called us. It was a performance. He didn't care about the guard I was holding. He cared about his reputation. He invited us inside. An obvious trap. But standing in the rain with a trembling human shield wasn't going to get me answers. I accepted. But he kept the blade at the guard's throat. Trust is a weakness I burned away a long time ago. Miles away, panic was setting in. My grandfather, the Duke, was reading a report. Sir Masson Paul, an 8-star knight. He was in the city. The presence of the knight meant only one thing. His master was here. The Duke knew my nature. He knew that if the reckless 6th prince was in the city, and I was in the city, we would collide. He was right to be afraid. Inside the guild base, the air changed. It was too rich. Too clean for a criminal den. We were led into a grand hall. A man sat on a velvet sofa, wearing a golden mask. He looked at me like I was a toy. Amused. Do you know me? He asked. I didn't care about his name. I cared about the shadow standing behind him. A warrior. His Manhwa presence was heavy. Suffocating. An 8-star knight. This wasn't a guild leader. This was a predator playing dress-up. The masked man spoke in riddles. He claimed he was just visiting his sister. Adopted siblings. A lie so thin it was insulting. I ran out of patience. I didn't speak. I launched the Blue Wolf Swordsman's secret technique. 0 to kill range in a heartbeat. It was a test. I needed to see what was under the arrogance. He reacted instantly. One motion. He didn't just block me. He reversed the world. My sword was deflected. Suddenly, I was the one with cold steel pressing against my jugular. He laughed. Look who's the hostage now. But the proximity gave me the answer. Through the eye holes of the mask, I saw it. Golden eyes. Jet black hair. The realization hit harder than the blade. The 8-star knight named Masson. The golden eyes. This was Revelio. The 6th prince. He spoke casually about burning down the imperial palace. The rumors weren't exaggerated. He was mad. I was standing on a cliff edge, negotiating with a man who treated chaos like a hobby. Then, the sister arrived. The temperature in the room dropped. She wasn't human. An elf walked in, carrying a tea set like a common maid. The prince dropped his act immediately. He spoke to her with formal respect. Elves live long lives. They command deference. But it wasn't her age that made the air turn to lead. It was her Manhwa. Dense. Vast. Controlled. The prince was dangerous. She was a catastrophe waiting to happen. She denied the bombing. She spoke softly, asking me to lower my sword. Why should I trust you? I asked. She didn't promise me anything. She offered a demonstration. Ma flared. A visible storm erupted around her small frame. If I had attacked you, she said, there wouldn't be evidence. There wouldn't be anything. The pressure slammed into me. Seventh circle magic. She was right. If she wanted us dead, we would have been erased from existence before we even knocked on the door. My sword felt very light. And very useless. The interrogation was over. We weren't the hunters anymore. We were guests. And we were only alive because she allowed it. The assassin's mask sat on the table. A silent souvenir of the violence that had just taken place. Boina, the chairwoman of Caligo, poured tea. Her hand was steady. The terrifying weight of her mana pressure was gone, replaced by the practiced elegance of a hostess. She cleared the air immediately. The explosives used to attack the Reston family were not hers. She admitted to handling dangerous materials, yes, but only for the eccentric experiments of the man sitting across from her. She dismissed the accusation with a sneer. Cowardly tactics were the signature of her rivals. Not Caligo. Prince Revelio or Rio, as he insisted, sat with the posture of a man who didn't care if he lived or died. He poked at Masson, my rigid subordinate. He treated a tense interrogation like a tea party. Masson couldn't process the disrespect. To the naked eye, the prince was a fool. To me, he was a variable. A piece on the board that had already decided to set the game on fire. Boina dropped the pleasantries. She paid her respects to the Archduke's bloodline. But that was just the wrapping paper. She was here for a transaction. She knew the real culprit behind the bombing. She had the name. But the price was steep. The condition sounded absurd. She demanded that I become friends with the prince. I saw the trap before she finished the sentence. A friendship between a duke's scion and a prince isn't a friendship. It's a political declaration. The royal family would see it as suspicion. The central nobles would see it as a threat. Boina nodded. That was the point. It wasn't supposed to look like camaraderie. Rio leaned in. His smile widened. He knew exactly how the optics would play out. The Riston family needed to make a move. This alliance was a warning shot to the royal court. Masson, watching from the sidelines, finally understood. The prince wasn't just eccentric. He was unhinged. Rio didn't care about power or justice. He ran on spite. He was willing to ignite a political storm just to make his father, the emperor, suffer. His dream was to be a problem. A title he wore like armor. Boina pressed on. The night was long. But time was short. She revealed the rot at the core of the investigation. The Imperial Guard. They had been sent to solve the attack on the Reston Hare. But they weren't solving anything. They were covering it up. They were colluding with the culprit. This was the leverage Caligo held. Boina slid a document across the table. A scroll recording the movements of the conspirators. She waited for me to accept the chaotic alliance she had built. Across the city, a rat was trying to leave the sinking ship. The red-haired guild leader of Oyon with barking orders. His subordinates loaded crates. His anxiety leaked out in every shout. He thought he was escaping to a life of nobility. A reward promised for his treachery. He lived under the delusion that the Imperial Guard would wipe the evidence and secure his future. He stood in his study, fantasizing about the title he was owed. He thought the only thing waiting for him was luxury. He was wrong. The doors to his sanctuary smashed open. He heard the noise and smiled. He assumed his co-conspirators from the Imperial Guard had arrived to escort him to safety. He ran to the door, relief washing over his panic. I was standing in the doorway, blocking his exit. Beside me stood Zeres. The guild leader stammered. His brain couldn't process the shit. The hunter had become the hunted. I looked down at him. My hand rested on the hilt of the sword that would seal his fate. I mocked his shock. He was just a loose end. A snag the conspirators wanted to prune. A stepped into the room. The air turned cold. I commented on how deeply he seemed to cherish his family. A cruel prelude to the lesson I was about to teach. Zeres handed me a sack. It was heavy. And it was soaked in blood. The guild leader stared at it. His eyes widened. The horrific possibility took root in his mind. I tossed the wet bag at his feet. He collapsed. His legs gave way under the weight of his own imagination. He wailed. He clutched the bloody sack, convinced that the severed heads of his wife and children were inside. He screamed for his family, broken by the very tactics he had paid others to use. I got tired of the noise. I silenced him with a sharp rebuke. I drew my sword and cut the bag open. The contents spilled onto the floor. They were not the heads of innocents. They were hands. Severed, calloused, scarred hands. I asked him if he truly thought those raw extremities belonged to his kin. He stared, confused, trembling. I clarified the reality for him. These were the hands of the assassins he had hired. The hands that had accepted his goal to kill my family. Relief flooded him again. It was disgusting to watch. He thanked me for sparing his family. He made the mistake of thinking that mercy for them meant leniency for him. I corrected him instantly. I spared the innocent because they were not guilty. He, however, had joined hands with those who sought the destruction of the Riston house. Lives had been lost because of his greed. There would be no noble title. There would be no escape. I sentenced him to the underground prison of the Cheonde fortress. I promised him that torture would not be a punishment. It would be a routine. A daily fact of life until his body gave out. I ordered Zeros to drag him away. Back in the safety of the estate, the board was shifting. Rio discussed the rumors. The emperor's failing health. The uproar among the nobles. The pro-war factions were agitated. The split within the Imperial Guard was deepening. The chaos was exactly what he wanted. Boina looked at the prince. Her gaze held a softness that seemed out of place in a room full of killers. She explained her loyalty. It wasn't a business arrangement. Years ago, when she first arrived in Titi, she and her mother were nearly killed in the rain. It was Rio who had drawn his sword. It was the foolish prince who saved them. That act of heroism created the mage she was today. Because of that debt, she would ensure that I, the new ally of the prince, was treated as a vile asset. The final piece needed to be set. I stood before the local administrator. The man was terrified. He saw the scandal coming and wanted to run. I told him the plan. We would publicly announce that the Riston house had been attacked. He panicked. He feared the loss of prestige. He feared the accountability falling on T. I assured him he wouldn't be the fault guy. I spun the narrative. By exposing the incident rather than hiding it, he wouldn't look weak. He would look like a just leader standing against injustice. A man fearless enough to reveal the truth. Darius watched me. He was still uncertain about this aggressive strategy. He looked to the projection of my grandfather, the Duke, for guidance. But the lord of the house had already decided. He gave the order. Let the boy proceed. I smiled. A predator finally allowed to hunt without restraint. I told them to trust me just this once. We would watch. And we would see the world burn exactly as I intended. The sun dies against the horizon. Shadows stretch across the Duke's desk. A report lands. Heavy. Precise. It is a message from my younger self. The investigation is done. The damages are calculated. The stage is set. The lord of the house reads it. A cold satisfaction settles in his eyes. The city council. Those arrogant thorns in the sight of the Riston family. They are unraveling. One member in chains. The rest scrambling like rats on a sinking ship. Begging to cooperate. Praying to avoid annihilation. Hale, the advisor, shifts uncomfortably. He sees the chaos. He sees the immediate collapse of order. He speaks his fear. By destroying the council, we hand a crown to the mayor. He worries about creating a new enemy. He fails to see the truth. A mayor who owes us his life is easier to leash than a council that thinks it rules by right. The Duke understands. He knows the council is finished. Tying them to terrorism is a fatal blow. He looks at the projection. He doesn't see recklessness. He sees a brilliantly executed revenge. The Riston influence hasn't just survived. It has expanded. But Pale cannot let it go. He is 13, my lord. The number hangs in the air. 13. He questions the burden. He questions the trust. The Duke looks at him. The look of a predator recognizing its own kind. A wolf must walk the wolf's path. Worrying about a child in the wild is natural. But the choice is made. He will trust me to the end. This isn't just a victory. It is a warning shot. A signal to the parasites in the capital. To the Imperial Guards rotting in their armor. If the ancestors were here, heads would already be rolling on the floor. The order is given. Prepare for the storm. The Riston family is moving. Down in the city, the play begins. A.R. Grind stands on the podium. His voice is amplified by magic and rage. He plays the victim perfectly. He declares his shame. treachery in their proud city. He spins the narrative exactly how I wrote it. A corrupt councilman, a power grab, an assassination attempt on the grandson of Archduke Halo. The crowd roars. They chant Grind's name. Their anger finds a target. The council bastards. Grind promises to return the city to the people. And they believe him. Because they are desperate to believe. I watch from the high balcony. Leo stands beside me. My grandfather stands beside him. Leo is impressed. He takes to it like a fish to water, he says. A politician who never misses a chance. Grandfather corrects him gently. Grind didn't rise by accident. He has the skill to match the opportunity I gave him. But beneath the calm mask, the Duke is reeling. A 13-year-old boy orchestrated this. And the head of House Rustem allowed it. Archduke Hala values my abilities. Perhaps too much. He sees me in the line of succession. A blessing. Or a curse. He turns to me. The noble mask cracks. Genuine concern leaks out. Are you alright? He knows my mother. He knows she hated me getting involved in the filth of politics. He wonders if I compromised my soul for his sake. I stay silent. I let him talk. He offers a lesson I learned in blood a lifetime ago. Sometimes, you must break your principles. He justifies it. The emperor wants the power holders checked. It was necessary. If doing the right thing requires you to break yourself, do not hesitate. He leaves us with that. He has matters to settle before the capital. Leo and I are left alone. The cheers below are deafening. Leo's gaze is sharp. What did he say that they liked so much? It's simple, I say. He promised to break the giants. When the old powers fall, space opens up. Even the smallest man thinks he can rise. That possibility is a drug. It makes the masses happy. Leo shakes his head. I don't understand. Because you grew up in a greenhouse. He counters. Your branch is the richest. He thinks wealth protects you from reality. He offers to spar. Action to bridge the gap. I decline. I'm tired. We had already secured the mayor earlier. In a quiet room. Away from the eyes of the public. Grind had thanked us. Laughing. Claiming the city felt alive again. He thanked me for the justification. I played the humble truth teller. I promised him knights. Reinforcements. Leo watched it all. He saw what politics really looks like. When the mayor tried to leave, I stopped him. Wars require funding. Even political ones. I dropped a heavy bag on the table. Gold. Pure gold. Profits Leo and I skimmed from the magic stone mine. Our little secret, I told him. The mayor's eyes went wide. He was easily bought. He proclaimed us his only true friends. Leo looked horrified. His internal voice screaming. He never agreed to bribery. But he stayed silent. The next morning brings reality. Luggage is loaded. The escort to the capital is announced. The Imperial Guard. I hate it. It sits poorly in my stomach. I corner Zeres. Is this approved? He nods. The head of house ordered it. Zeres cannot come. He has prisoners to manage. Wounded to tend. A different commander will take us to the capital. The name drops like a stone. Hugo Reston. The son of my eldest uncle. Tails' son. A genius. 6 stars at 28. A monster. My plan just grew a tumor. Hugo isn't just family. He is a competitor. And a dangerous one. I don't even get time to process it. A noise shatters the morning. Obnoxious. Loud. A garish vehicle roars toward the gates. Hugo leans out. Shouting. Little brother Charon. Little brother Leo. He asks about breakfast. His enthusiasm is a weapon. It masks the razor blades of family politics. I look at Zeres. Desperation creeps into my voice. Can we just go? Zeres is stone. The wheels are turning. The carriage is waiting. And I am no longer the only one holding the reins. Rio Keimer didn't bother wiping the dust from his armor. It was the filth of a destroyed railway. To a soldier like him, that dirt was holy. He stood before us, a wall of rigid formality. His apology was empty. He made it clear where we stood. Investigating the emperor's property came first. Breeding the hairs of a duke came second. To him, a broken rail line was a wound on the empire itself. Far more urgent than the hurt pride of a noble house. The woman in the carriage wasn't satisfied. Sharp. Politically astute. She pressed him. She asked why the Imperial Guard was ignoring the attack on our house to stare at train tracks. It was a trap. A test of loyalty. Ryo didn't buckle. He declared that destroying the railway was treason. And in his eyes, treason against the throne outweighed any noble squabble. It was a shield of logic. No aristocrat could pierce it without looking like a traitor. Beside me, Leo tensed. His hand twitched. He wanted to demand the respect our bloodline supposedly commanded. I stopped him with a single glance. There is no victory in arguing with a man who believes he is the law. I smiled. A hollow, practiced expression. I accepted Ryuk's reasoning. It was better to appear as a submissive, understanding child. Not a threat. Not yes. We stepped into the vehicle, leaving the soldier to his investigation. As Ryuk watched us leave, I knew what was in his head. He suspected the guard was being used as a pawn. A game between powerful houses. He told himself that if he found corruption, he would crush it. He was a man of principles. In my experience, men like him are the first to break when the world stops following their rules. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere shifted. From confrontation to negotiation. Ryo, the prince sitting across from me, dropped the mask. No more casual chatter. He brought up Mayor T. The impassioned speech from the town we had just left. Ryo had realized the game I was playing. By orchestrating the mayor's rise, I hadn't just saved a town. I had restored the shaken prestige of House Reston. I had secured a future ally. Was it your plan? He asked. I saw no reason to deny it. I told him the truth. Coming from the streets teaches lessons the academy never could. Survival requires using every tool, even the desperate ambition of a small-town mayor. Ryo lied. He mistook my pragmatism for cleverness. He thought I was a talented schemer. He didn't know why I was cheating. I was operating with the answer key of a past life, correcting mistakes before they could even be made. The crystal orb in Ryo's hand flared to life. Interruption. His sister's voice cut through the air, mocking his failure to charm me. I clarified our standing immediately. We were not friends. I had not agreed to any deal. Trust is a currency I was not willing to spend on royals who watched from the safety of their palaces. But the woman on the other end was persistent. She represented an Elfaron guild. She didn't care about the House of Reston. She wanted to invest in me. She called me a good product. It was a dehumanizing assessment, but it was honest. I respected cold greed more than feigned friendship. She offered information as a down payment to earn my trust. I took the communication orb she offered. If she wanted to be a tool in my hand, I would not refuse her. The sun died behind the massive walls of the capital. The gates swallowed us whole. The vehicle roared into the belly of the beast. Ryo offered a guide. He acted as if we were tourists on a holiday. I declined. I did not need a guide for a graveyard I had already visited. I knew these streets. I knew where the bodies would be buried, because I had already seen them fall. We parted ways with the royals and the guard. Ryo came bid us farewell. He promised we would meet again. He was his right. The capital was a small cage for the beasts it held. We walked into the night. Leo's eyes were drawn to the sky. The piercing blue spire of the magic tower. It tore into the clouds. A beacon of mana and wealth that dominated the skyline. I looked at the tower. It was far more opulent than it had been 50 years ago in my memories. The mages had been busy, gorging themselves on the Empire's coin, building a monument to their own arrogance. Do you feel it? Leo asked. The weight of the capital. I did. But not in the way he meant. To me, the city was not a place of opportunity. It was a tomb. The lights. The noise. The stone beneath my boots. It all felt like returning to the site of my own execution. I was walking through a memory of blood that hadn't been spilled yet. Then, the silence broke. Not with a sound, but with a pressure that stopped his cold. Leo hadn't even sensed him approach. Even I had barely felt the ripple in the air. We stopped in the middle of the empty street. A figure stood in the darkness. His cloak settled around him like a shadow. He had appeared without a footstep, waiting for us. He turned. Blue eyes glowed in the dark, cutting through the night with terrifying clarity. Hugo Reston, the genius of the Empire. He greeted us with the casual familiarity of a brother, welcoming us to the capital. But the mana radiating from him was a suffocating weight. This was the monster of the main house. The game had truly begun, and the first piece on the board was already trying to crush us. Hugo Reston stood in the shadows, waiting. He offered his hand. A polite gesture. The welcoming cousin. But I knew better. This wasn't agreeing. It was a test. As our palms touched, he didn't shake my hand. He attacked. A surge of nana flooded into my veins. Prude. Arrogant. A probe designed to measure the country bumpkin he thought I was. He expected to find a shallow puddle. I let him touch the edge of an ocean. I didn't just block it. They flared my own mana back. Not a gentle tide. A violent, storm-tossed crash. I saw it. The spark of absolute shock in his glowing blue eyes. He pulled back. His smile stiffened. Just a fraction. But the message was received. In that split second, the predator realized he had made a mistake. The rumors were wrong. I wasn't just a child from the branch family. I was a variable he couldn't calculate. He masked his fear with advice. Told us to watch ourselves in the capital. But the threat was gone. He was just a dog marking territory, and he knew he'd been outmatched. We left him in the dark. We entered the warmth of the estate. Grandma was there. Arms open. Completely unaware of the invisible war that had just happened on her doorstep. She saw her grandsons. Dollar. Returned home. Leo melted into it. He needed the comfort. He needed the welcome. But I moved through the embrace like a ghost. Grandfather was absent. Buried in work. Good. I didn't want to see him yet. I needed silence. I retreated to my room. The darkness of the night fell heavy. I uncorked a bottle of liquor I'd stolen from the Prentice carriage. I needed the burn. Something to ground me in reality. But solitude is a luxury I don't have. My sword spoke up. The cursed relic that binds me to my past. It started nagging. Complaining about the alcohol. Absurd. A legendary weapon acting like a worried mother. We bickered in the dim light. It denied its nature. It claimed it wasn't a demonic blade. It swore vengeance on the ones who corrupted it. I teased it. Called it weak. But beneath the banter, my mind was drifting. I had read the sword's memories. I knew things it didn't. But the biggest question remained. Why was I here? Why was I pulled back from death, 50 years later, with my memories intact? This wasn't a miracle. It was a deliberate act of force. I looked out the window. The sprawling capital. A city of lies. The answer was out there, hiding in the dark. Morning came. The city woke up. And the Leo woke up with it. He was desperate to prove he belonged here. He walked the streets with a stiff back, scolding me, telling me not to look around like a curious child. He spoke of dignity, reputation, the hollow armor of the aristocracy. He didn't understand. Reputation is just a story people agree to believe. I played the fool, grinning, dragging him along, acting the part of the carefree younger brother, hiding the predator underneath. I led him to a shop, tucked away in a quiet corner. Leo turned up his nose. He called it old-fashioned. To him, it was just a dusty store. To me, it was a memory frozen in time. The bell chimed. The tailor stepped out. Live on. Time had aged him, carved deep lines into his face. But I recognized the boy he used to be. He saw the crest on our chests, the rest uneagle. But his eyes grew distant when he spoke of the past. He mentioned a customer from decades ago. Sir Kane. Hearing my old name spoken aloud, it was like a physical blow. Lilihan didn't know. He didn't know he was speaking to the very soul he was mourning. He remembered Kane as endlessly kind. A man who treated a shop boy with respect when the world wouldn't. He smiled, lost in the memory. He said Sir Kane probably never even knew his name. But I did. I remembered calling him kid. For a moment, the weight of 50 years vanished. To be remembered so fondly. By someone who had no reason to lie. It was a strange gift. Bitter. Sweet. I introduced myself as Karen. Burying Kane back in the grave where he belonged. But peace is fragile. The door flew open. A girl burst in. Shouting. Panic in her voice. She screamed the news. Sir Kane's enemies had arrived in the capital. She yelled the name of the threat with terrified urgency. House Reston. The grandsons of Archduke Hallow. She stopped, breathless. And then she saw Hughes. She saw the crests on our coats. The realization drained the blood from her face. I stood there, staring at her, processing the absurdity. In this new life, I am the grandson of the man who killed me. To the people who love Kane, I am the villain. The irony was sharp enough to cut. I had returned to find the truth. only to find that history had already drawn the battle lines, and that I was standing on the wrong side. The shopkeeper felt it first. He froze. It wasn't just the uniform. It was the gravity she brought with her. Emmy Ultra. In the timeline I remembered, that name was written in blood. A legend. A knight who led the Imperial Guard through decades of slaughter. But here, she was just 17. A 4-star prodigy standing in a tailor shop. Unscathed. Unbroken. She hadn't yet been hardened by the wars I had already died in. The shopkeeper bowed. He scraped. He looked at her like she was a god descending from the heavens. I watched him with a dull itch in my chest. Annoyance. The world loves its geniuses. It loves the ones who rise without effort. The ones born with wings. While the rest of us are forced to carve our path out of solid rock. She turned. Her eyes locked on to me. Then Leo. She knew our names. She claimed the knights had gossiped. That it was casual. I knew better. This was the sharp, owned instinct of a predator. She didn't see a customer. She sensed the mana I kept tightly coiled beneath my skin. She felt the danger I was hiding. It was a terrifying intuition. The kind that usually gets good soldiers killed before they turn 20. The air shifted. The conversation turned to the past. It always does with her family. She asked the question that haunted this room. Why was your grandfather considered the enemy of Sir Kane? To her, Kane was a paragon. A saint in armor. To me, he was a tragic fool. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't give her the polite lie she expected. I told her the truth. He was a man who sold his soul to a demon. The shop went silent. The temperature spiked. My words didn't just land. They drew blood. Her mana flared. Big. Violent. Uncontrolled. It filled the small room with killing intent. She didn't see a survivor giving a history lesson. She saw an insolent noble spitting on her idol. Her hand dropped to her hilt. Duel me. Her voice trembled. Not with fear, but with fury. Self-righteous fury. She claimed to have inherited Kane's will. A scoff. I knew what that will entail. Blind loyalty to a monster. Standing by a tyrant until the bitter, pointless end. She called it pride. I called it outdated stupidity. We stood on the edge. The precipice of violence. I watched her stance. I traced the lines of her attack. I was ready to break her. And then, the absurdity of the human body intervened. Roll. A sound like a dying cavern. Her stomach roared. The tension shattered instantly. The killing aura evaporated. She froze. Her face flushed crimson. Humiliation. I didn't give her time to recover her dignity. I didn't let her step back. I didn't draw a weapon. Instead, I released it. It wasn't the hot, uncontrolled outburst she had shown. It was cold, crushing. It filled the room like rising water in a locked cell. Or beef. Or mutton. I asked the question softly. It was a mockery. But the power behind it was a warning. She felt the gap between us. She realized that despite her 4 stars, despite her talent, she was standing before something she did not understand. The predator had become the prey. The tension broke, replaced by the mundane necessity of food. We moved to a table. The silence was thick, awkward. I used the excuse of repaying a family debt to buy her a meal. But that was a lie. My true intention was to gauge the depths of this so-called prodigy. She ate with desperate speed, like someone who forgot to care for herself. In merely fueling up for our duel, she claimed. I let her believe that. When the meal was nearly done, I demanded a handshake. To seal the agreement, she reached out. She expected the soft, manicured hand of a spoiled noble. What she found was sandpaper. She paused. Her fingers traced the thick calluses on my palm. The friction told a story. In that moment, her hostility wavered. She knew what those hands meant. They were not the hands of a genius. They were not the hands of a political schemer. They were the hands of a warrior who had swung a sword until his skin broke, and then healed, and then broke again. 1,000 times. She looked at me with a new expression. Grudging respect. I saw the potential in her then. The raw material. She could be forged into something useful. Something lethal. If she could just let go of her antiquated ideals. We were almost reaching an understanding. Almost. Then the door opened again. This time, it wasn't a warrior. It was a nuisance. A blonde noble strutted in. Guards flanked him, but he dismissed them with a lazy wave of his hand. He spoke of Professor Iris, of academic theories regarding Cain. He baited Ami's interest with the hollow charm of a snake. Then he turned his attention to us. His eyes scanned the table with undisguised arrogance. "When will the duel take place?" he asked. I answered plainly. "Once we finish the food we ordered." Ami warned me. She said she wouldn't hold back. But the noble had heard enough. He interrupted. He scolded Ami. Like a child. He berated her for wasting her time with drifters. For not contacting him first. He looked down at Is, sneering at the idea of an apprentice knight lowering herself to dine with the likes of me. He was loud. He was entitled. And he was painfully unaware of the danger he was courting. He thought his bloodline made him untouchable. He didn't see the shift in my eyes. He didn't see the cold calculation. I looked at him and I didn't see a man. I saw a target. I had found a reckless brat. And deep down, I felt the dark satisfaction of a teacher who is about to deliver a very painful lesson. The lone shark sits there, wrapped in arrogance. He believes gold can buy safety. He gulp speaks of interest rates and debts, sneering at everyone in the room. He flaunts his family's influence. He thinks the reputation of a lone shark is a shield. It isn't a shield. It's a target. And he has no idea that a predator is sitting 2 tables away, watching him. When Karen interrupts, it isn't have chivalry. It's boredom, mixed with opportunity. He plays the fool for a moment. He lets Stigall list his credentials. Lets the man bloat with self-importance. Then, the facade drops. Karen stands up. He holds a potion in one hand, a weapon in the other. He isn't planning a duel. He is planning a cycle of agony. He presents the healing potion with a smile that should have sent the other man running. He explains it simply. It heals fractures instantly. To a dull mind, that sounds like trivia. To a survivor, it's a threat. It means the beating won't end when the body breaks. It means he can shatter a bone, heal it, and shatter it again. Hidgal doesn't understand. Not until the first strike lands. Karen's method is simple efficiency. He is going to reform the man's character through the repetition of trauma. The screaming that fills the hall isn't combat. It's the sound of a spoiled child learning the true definition of power. News travels fast when noble blood is spilled. In the office of the taxation commissioner, the report arrives like a ticking clock. Karen has been in the capital for less than an hour, and he is already in custody. The commissioner rubs his temples. He is Karen's maternal grandfather, and he knows the victim's reputation well. Hidgal is a leecher, a parasite who preys on the vulnerable. The commissioner knows the man deserved to be beaten to death, but he also knows the political cost. He prepares himself to clean up a disaster. He assumes he'll have to negotiate with the Kyan family. But the report contains a detail that defies logic. The assistant speaks up. "Sir, you don't need to intervene. The victim isn't demanding justice. The Gaul is weeping in his cell, begging for mercy. Broken and reformed in the span of a single meal. He testifies that the assault was entirely his own fault. He wants nothing more than to ensure Karen never comes near him again." The commissioner sits in stunned silence. He wonders what kind of dark magic his grandson used. It wasn't magic. It was fear. Fear so absolute that it overrode pride. The realization settles in for the old man. The Archduke didn't send an untrained boy to the capital without a plan. He didn't send a diplomat. He unleashed a mad dog. And he knew exactly what chaos would follow. The commissioner understands now. He isn't witnessing a mistake. He is witnessing a weapon test. Outside the gates, the dynamic shifts. Karen walks out. Not as a prisoner, but as a man who owns the pavement. The guard looks at him with dread. Karen dropped names. Not to boast, but to ensure compliance. He mentions the Archduke. Then, with a casual smile, he asks the guard to verify the name of his maternal grandfather. The guard realizes too late. He arrested the grandson of the taxation commissioner, the man who holds the purse strings of the entire administration. The officer can do nothing but salute and trample, promising absolute loyalty. Karen has woven a web of protection so tight that the law is now his accomplice. Power isn't just about swinging a sword. It's about ensuring no one dares to swing one back. Hugo waits in the street. He expects a fugitive, or a scandal. Instead, he finds a young noble strolling out, as if he just finished tea time. Hugo asks what he said to earn such respect. Karen deflects. Just a pep talk. Hugo looks at the boy's back and sees the truth. This is a force of nature. It cannot be controlled. Only survive. As they walk into the sunset, Hugo has one thought: restraint. He wonders if he should buy magical ropes. Anything to bind the chaos walking in front of him. But it's a futile thought. There is no rope in this kingdom strong enough to hold what Karen Leston is becoming. The mad dog is loose in the yard. And he is just getting started. The air in the cafe was sweet. Pastries. Sugar. Warmth. But underneath the scent of butter, there was the heavy, metallic aftertaste of violence. Karen sat in the silence. The shopkeeper rushed over, piling more sweets onto the table. His eyes were wide, wet with gratitude. He called Karen a hero. He thanked him for breaking the gull, for punishing the wig. Karen chewed a cookie. He found the word hero funny. He wasn't a savior. He was just a predator who had decided to crush a smaller, annoying annoyance. But the masses are simple. They see a thug with a noble bloodline and call him a god. He let the sugar dissolve. It distracted him from the bitter taste of irony. Then, the conversation shifted. Money. The invisible chain that chokes even the strongest warriors. Emmy admitted the truth. She was drowning in debt to the Kine family. A classic tragedy. A provincial noble family tries to swim in the capital. They reach for power, and the weight pulls them under. Without a faction, without a monster to back you, the capital is just a slow suffocation. She explained why she refused to choose a side. She started talking about Sir Kane, the man Karen used to be. She spoke his name with reverence, like a prayer. She believed Kane followed the path of the sword out of pride, out of honor. Karen felt his skin crawl. She was wrong. The narrator knows the truth. Kane didn't have pride. He had a desperate, clawing need to survive. He fought like a rat in a corner. But time has a way of polishing suffering until it looks like glory. Karen made his move. I will clear your debt. Practical. A transaction. Talent for freedom. It landed wrong. Hugo choked on his tea. Annie stood up, her face burning red. They misunderstood. They thought he was buying a woman, not a warrior. That is how the world views men like him. They assume the basest desire. Karen cut through the outrage. Cold. Sharp. The harangue night order. That is what I want. He didn't want her body. He wanted her blade. He saw a weapon that could be sharpened to protect his future. But she refused. Emmy Ultra was stubborn. She declared she would stay with the Imperial Guard. She wanted to change the rotting system from within. It was a noble sentiment. It was exactly the kind of thinking that gets good people killed. Karen looked at her and saw ghosts. He remembered the soldiers from his past. The loyal fools who stood their ground against tides that could not be stopped. He watched them die then. He knew Emmy's path led to the same cold grave. She challenged him. A duel. Her spirit was unbroken. Karen declined. He didn't brawl in the street. If they were to cross swords, he would use the violence for something useful. An official exchange match, he proposed. A stage where her defeat would mean something. Emmy left into the night. She called back to him. Forced cheerfulness. Demanding the respect due to an older sister. Karen watched her go. His face was a mask. He respected only strength. And she had yet to prove she had enough to survive. She promised to try her best. Karen knew the truth. Sometimes, your best is simply not enough to stop the avalanche. Back in the solitude of his room, the game of politics resumed. The communication orb glowed. Zerez. The handler was displeased. The news of the beating had spread. The eyes of the capital's noble families were turning toward them. Zerez preached caution. Karen dismissed him with a wave. He promised to be good, to restrain himself in the palace. He swore on a father's honor he did not possess. It was a lie, but it bought him peace for a few hours. Then, he made the real call. The orb shifted. The family head. The duke. The voice was calm. Absolute authority. Karen presented his request. The exchange match with the Imperial Guard. He framed it as a test of skill. A tradition. The duke was shrewd. He saw through the excuse. But he saw the utility in the violence. Permission granted, the duke said. One condition. Cause no trouble until the royal banquet concludes. Karen agreed. He sat in the darkness. The moonlight washed over the estate. He had promised silence, and he would keep it. For now. He looked out over the sprawling capital, the city of spires and shadows. To others, it was the center of the kingdom, a place of dreams. To him, it was just another battlefield, waiting to be watered with blood. He gazed at the horizon, fully aware of the path he was walking. This place was not home. It was a grave, and he was ready to fill it. By in the tower of the Reston estate, the machinery of the future was grinding. Cirrus brought the word. The Imperial Guard had accepted the duel. Immediately. To a man like the Duke, who measured every breath in political capital, speed is suspicious. It smells of desperation. Or a trap. He didn't like either. His gaze drifted from the strategy board to a ghost. Aaron. He reminded him of Cain. The name alone turned the wine sour in his throat. Do you miss him? Cirrus asked, poking the old wound. The denial was instant. Sharp. The Duke spat the words. He claimed him nothing but scorn for a man who adored his pleas when the world was burning. He called Cain a bastard. A traitor to their bond. But the survivor knows the truth. Bitter hatred is usually just love that has rotted over a lifetime of regret. Then, the conversation turned to the girl. Annie Ultra. Kieran wanted her in the Knights. The Duke saw a useless apprentice. Cirrus saw a thread to the past. She worshipped Cain's memory. A dangerous religion in a world that had worked so hard to paint him as a villain. If the Duke hadn't rewritten history, Cain would have been a monster. And then came the hammer drop. Cirrus revealed the secret. Her name wasn't Ultra. 50 years ago. It was A. The Duke's eyes widened. The arrogance vanished for a split second. A name from the buried history. A corpse rising from the grave to haunt him again. Meanwhile, the capital streets screamed with adoration. Flowers rained down on the carriage. The common folk cheered for the young heroes of the Reston house. To Karen, it was a circus. Leo asked if he was embarrassed. Karen was too busy dissecting the lie. This wasn't law. It was propaganda. The Imperial Palace was parading them like trophies to prove the Duke stood with the royal house. Karen realized the truth. Even a puppet emperor St. They used the Duke's own blood as a shield. They arrived at the palace gates. Sunlight turned the stone to gold. And Sir Ryuk was waiting. He wore the thin smile of a man who thinks a uniform makes him a god. He pretended to be honored, but the demand was immediate. Surrender your swords. It was a standard humiliation. A test of the leash. Karen played the part. He handed over the weapon. But he couldn't resist a tug. My grandfather broke this rule 50 years ago, he said. Casual. Bored. It was a deliberate provocation. A reminder that rules are just suggestions for the truly powerful. Ryuk bristled. His face hardened. He warned the boy to watch his tongue before the majesty of the palace. He thought he was disciplining an arrogant noble. He didn't know he was barking at a dormant beast. Karen didn't raise his voice. He simply let go. Gravity collapsed. A crushing, invisible weight slammed into the courtyard. Ryuk's knees hit the stone. It felt like the world had centered solely on his spine. The other guards froze. Their instincts screamed at them to run. Karen stood over the kneeling knight. His smile had changed. His eyes were void of empathy. He blamed his sword. Said it was a bit wild. Said it needed careful handling. But everyone felt the truth. The mana pouring off him wasn't wild. It was an ocean. Deep. Cold. Drowning. Ryuk, pale and trembling, could only gasp. He learned true fear in the span of a single heartbeat. The walk to the main hall was heavy. Leo walked beside his brother. But the distance felt infinite. He had felt that power too. It wasn't anger. Anger burned hot and fades. This was permanent. Leo looked at Karen's back and felt a chill. He remembered a battlefield. Fire and ruin. And Karen standing in the slaughter with that same impassive, distant face. He wondered if he could ever truly understand the thing walking beside him. He decided, for his own sanity, to stop asking. They reached the great doors. The herald cried out their names. Leo Reston. Karen Reston. The heavy timber groaned open, revealing the blinding light of the court. Karen stepped forward. Then to the lens then. But he wasn't a victim to be judged. He was a predator, returning to a hunting ground he knew well. He was ready to see what this new era had prepared for him. The timber doors groaned open. A cavernous hall. An empty throne. The air was heavy with the scent of old power and decaying authority. We had come to meet the emperor, but the man descending the marble steps was not the ruler of the world. It was Karian, the crown prince. He wore the golden laurels, but the weight was missing. A placeholder. A polite fiction to cover the rod at the heart of the empire. We bowed. Leo was stiff. Crushed by the pressure. I kept my eyes up. The prince looked down at us. A gaze that dissected. He spoke of our victory at the blessed barony, his voice smooth, cultured, and utterly hollow. Then, the mask slipped. Just for a fraction of a second. A clenched hand. A tremor of rage. He looked at me and didn't see a noble shin. He didn't see the grandson of a war hero. He saw the demon emperor. The tyrant his family had replaced. The darkness. He hated me instantly. He buried it quickly, layering it under aristocratic indifference. Then came the test. He mentioned Revelio, the sixth prince. He framed it as a casual observation on our friendship. But the razor was hidden in the words. In this snake bit, associating with the wrong brother is a death sentence. Know your place. He dismissed us. Leo exhaled, thinking we had survived a polite meeting. The fool. I had to drag him back to reality. That wasn't a compliment. It was a declaration of hostility. Our quarters were a gilded cage. Leo paced, his anxiety finally catching up to his limited understanding. The questions started pouring out. Our grandfather overthrew the demon emperor. The current ruler is that tyrant's son. This isn't just politics. It's a blood feud woven into the history of the continent. Leo fretted about eavesdropping magic. I didn't bother looking. The imperial family doesn't need to listen to our conversations to know we are enemies. They just need to look at our faces. I explained the reality. The rest name. The Diaz bloodline. We stood on the side of the sand the crown prince wanted to wash away. Leo looked horrified. Too little, too late. The door swung open. No knock. Revelio walked in. Casual. Smiling. Eating an apple like he was entering a tavern, not a ducal suite. Leo stammered at the breach of protocol. I just watched. The sixth prince. The wild card in a calculated equation. He didn't waste time. He sat down, chewing loudly, and confirmed everything. The hatred. The target on our backs. Then, his grin sharpened. It became something predatory. He spoke of the imperial tradition. In this cursed lineage, power isn't passed down. It is seized. The son overthrows the father. He discussed treason with a mouthful of fruit. He wasn't talking about a peaceful transition. He was talking about war. He looked at me, golden eyes gleaming. The nobles were gathering tonight. A powder keg waiting for a spark. He wasn't asking for loyalty. He was offering a partnership in chaos. Do you want to wreak havoc? Leo trembled, terrified by the insanity. I felt a cold smile tugging at my mouth. If the world treated me as a villain, I might as well enjoy the role. The banquet hall was a sea of light. Chandeliers dripping with crystal. The glittering elite. Silk dresses rustling like dry leaves. Laughter chiming like broken glass. Leo was swept up in the spectacle. I walked beside him, but my mind was drifting. I remembered a time before this life, when I was nothing more than a slave. Back then, a room like this would have been a distant dream. A paradise forbidden to the filth. Now, I walked through the crowd as a guest of honor. I felt nothing but content. Fainted faces. Empty smiles. Sheep waiting for the slaughter. They danced on the edge of a precipice. Blind to the drop. Suddenly, I stopped. A sensation crawled up my spine. Bold. Oily. It wasn't a sound. It was a vibration in the mana. My sword hummed at my hip. I narrowed my eyes, scanning the room. Beneath the perfume and the roast meat, there was a scent I knew too well. Something rotting. Something unnatural. Leo felt it too. The blood drained from his face. This wasn't political intrigue. Black magic. Someone had brought the darkness right into the banquet hall. I gripped the hilt of my sword. The imperial tradition was starting sooner than expected. The banquet hall smelled like expensive perfume and roasted meat. To everyone else, it was the scent of luxury. But to me, it smelled like rot. Like the oily, suffocating stench of a library burning down. Black magic. My cousin Leo went pale beside me. He felt it too. The vibration in the mana. The low, warning hum of a predator sitting nearby. Someone had brought TK into the heart of the empire, and the detection spells were silent. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the work of an amateur. We barely made it through the doors before the first fly started buzzing. Pirim. A noble from the Marquisate of Dez. He wore his arrogance like a second skin. He extended a hand, acting like it was a gift just to touch him. I took it, but I didn't look at him. In my past life, I would have played his game. I would have bowed. I would have scraped the floor to keep the peace. But I've already lived through the consequences of submission. I know exactly where that road ends. Karen's smile twitched. My indifference bruised his fragile little ego. He started muttering about manners, sneering that the Grand Duke's grandson was acting like a country bumpkin. Leo tried to smooth things over, ever the diplomat. But Karen ignored him. He had found a bigger target. The sixth prince entered the hall. Karen latched onto him immediately. A jagged whisper about half-blooded royals, mocking his lineage. The prince. He was a man who hid his cunning behind a mask of pleasantries. He smiled through the insult. He parried with a joke about his own commoner blood making him lose-tongued. They were children, playing with wooden swords, bickering over hierarchy while a monster sat in the corner, watching them. I stopped listening. Mina surged into my eyes. Vision flooded with blue light. I traced it. A thin, dark vapor winding through the crowd. It ignored the nobles. It ignored the guards. It coiled around a woman sitting alone at a table, sipping wine behind a mask. There she was. The anomaly. The prince and Karen were still posturing, trying to drag me into their conversation about who truly sat at the center of power. The prince flashed a politician's grin, welcoming us to the palace. I had no patience left. Mind shutting your damn mouth. The silence that followed was heavy. Karen looked like I had slapped him across the face. Leo looked terrified. I didn't care. I drew my sword. The metal hissed against the scabbard. A sharp, lethal sound that cut through the music and the chatter. The act is over, I announced. A rat with black magic is hiding here. The sixth prince's mask slipped. Just for a second. Genuine shock replaced the calculated smile. I turned at him. Not as a subject to a royal, but as a commander to a subordinate. Buy me some time, I ordered. Make sure no one escapes. What? The prince stammered. Illness to doctors. Demons to Ristons, I said. Do you want me to spell it out? I stepped forward. Karam, desperate to reclaim control, moved to block me. He reached for his sword, his face twisted in anger. I didn't slow down. I didn't even blink. I simply let my intent wash over him. A heavy, suffocating pressure. Something I had owned on battlefields he couldn't even imagine. Karam froze. His hand trembled over his hilt. Paralyzed. He stared at me, eyes widening as he finally realized the massive gap between us. I walked past him, as if he were furniture. He was irrelevant. Behind me, the sixth prince made his choice. He pulled a golden sphere from his coat. An illusion artifact. Light exploded outward. A honeycomb barrier sealed the hall. He shouted something about safety, about waiting for the Imperial Guard. But the panic had already set in. The nobles muttered, confused and frightened, trapped in a cage of golden light. I walked toward the woman in the mask. She didn't run. She sat calmly, watching me approach with a tilted head. I expected no one in the capital would welcome our family, I said, my voice low. But to think someone here is welcoming me like this. The woman laughed softly. Demons to Ristons. No way. She reached up, unclasped her mask. I can't call it a person. The face beneath was beautiful, but her eyes burned with violet fire. As expected of Halos' bloodline, she purred. Dark energy erupted from her skin, tearing through her fine dress like smoke. I was worried you might not find me. The nobles gasped, recoiling as the darkness flared. The woman stood, the air warping around her. She was pleased. She thought this was a game. I didn't give her time to explain the rules. I surged forward. My blade traced a lethal arc through the air. Don't you dare try anything, I whispered. The steel bit deep. It was a clean strike, born of muscle memory and cold necessity. Her head separated from her neck, spinning through the air in a shower of dark blood. Her body collapsed to the marble floor with a wet thud. Silence returned to the hall, broken only by the ragged breathing of the crowd. Then, from the floor, the severed head opened its eyes. The violet glow hadn't faded. A twisted smile stretched across her bloodied face. You're truly lovely, the head spoke. The screams began then. The noble women shrieked, clutching their pearls, finally understanding what had been sitting among them. It's a monster. Someone wailed. I stood over the corpse, sword in hand, watching the chaos unfold. The sixth prince stared at me through the golden barrier. His face was pale. They were all afraid now. Good. Here kept people alive. I tightened my grip on the hilt, The banquet was over. The war had begun. The screaming started first, a wave of sound shattering the heavy silence. Moments ago, these nobles were posturing with wine glasses. Now, they scrambled over one another like rats in a flooding cellar. Violet petals began to fall. They drifted down with a mockery of grace, landing on trembling shoulders, pooling in the blood on the floor. I watched them. I knew what they were. Not decorations. Physical manifestations of Nana so dense, it warped the air. My sword's blue aura flared. Instinctive. The hum of violence in my palms. I didn't panic. Panic is a luxury for those who expect to live forever. I watched the petals swirl around a severed head, knitting flesh, reconnecting bone. A grotesque display of regeneration. Interesting. Fast. But not perfect. There were seams in the magic. Hesitations. Every monster has a rhythm. Once you learn it, you can break it. The creature rose. A woman draped in violet energy and arrogance. Junia. She saw my sword chewing away her ma. The only reason I was still standing. She smiled. A predator's smile. Wide. Devoid of warmth. She lunged. Speed beyond human limits. She closed the distance in a heartbeat. Her claws raked the air where my throat had been a fraction of a second ago. I dodged. The wind of her passing stunned my skin. I countered. A tight arc. But she was already gone. Twisting mid-air with impossible agility. We traded blows in a blur of blue and violet. I felt the strain. This body wasn't the vessel of war I remembered. It was young, soft, unconditioned for slaughter. But the instincts were there. The muscle memory of 1,000 battles guided my hands. A claw caught my cheek. She landed lightly, licked the drop of blood from her finger. She tasted the manna, called it sweet. I tightened my grip. If she wanted to eat, I'd make sure she choked on it. Then, the variable move. Prince Leo, face pale, eyes burning with naive bravery. He drew his sword. He stepped up to the monster he couldn't possibly comprehend. He wanted to help, to lead, to protect. I stopped him. I didn't look back. Don't go, Leo. A command, not a request. He stammered, desperate to prove his worth. But I knew the truth. I knew the gap between us and the thing across the room. If he stepped into that circle of violence, he wouldn't be a hero. He would be a corpse. He would just die for nothing. My voice was cold, stripping away his illusion of glory. He froze, the reality of his own weakness pinning him to the spot. I turned back to the demon. A useless death. The phrase echoed in my mind. In my past life, I died a dog's death. Loyal to a mad king. Fighting a lost war. I died following orders. I died for nothing. But this, standing here, blade in hand, defying a monster that terrified the Empire. This was my choice. If I died here, bleeding on a ballroom floor because I refused to run, that was not a useless death. Waimana flared. Cold blue fire ignited in my eyes. She laughed. She enjoyed the defiance. She unleashed a torrent of energy. The violet aura exploded outward, cutting down anyone foolish enough to be in range. The hall became a slaughterhouse. Leo screamed my name. I didn't flee. I moved to kill. I planted my feet. I forced the mana reserves open. Too much for this body. My veins seared. The channels screamed. It didn't matter. Survival requires sacrifice. I raised the sword. The temperature dropped. The blue light became heavy. Liquid. A rang sword style. Form 5. The weight of the ocean. Full tide. I brought the blade down. A deluge of blue energy crashed into the violet storm. The foundation shook. Shunya's eyes widened. Her smile faltered. The recoil hit me instantly. I caught a spray of blood, painting the floor. My insides were tearing apart, like channeling a river through a straw. But as long as I could lift the sword, the cost was irrelevant. Shunya watched me. She wasn't fighting prey anymore. She was fighting a toy that could bite back. Her illusion shattered completely, revealing the twisted demon beneath. Outside the hall, the world reacted too late. Sirens wailed into the night. The Imperial Guard, led by Ryuk, scrambled. Good soldiers. Disciplined. Loyal. And completely useless. They reached the perimeter. Weapons drawn. But they stopped. A wall of darkness stood between them and the hall. A barrier of solid shadow. Ryuk barked orders. The mages threw their spells. Nothing. Magic fizzled against the black surface like water on hot iron. Ancient. Impenetrable. Ryuk stared at the barrier. Sweat cold on his brow. He looked at the glowing palace, now a tomb for everyone inside. He realized what I already knew. The war hadn't just begun. The enemy was already inside the gates. And no one was coming to save Yves. She talked about permission. About restraint. Arrogance spilled from her lips like poison, standing there in the purple flames. She said she wouldn't kill him. She thought she was the one holding the leash. Karen left him. He didn't say a word. He just watched the magic dance. His silence was louder than her taunts. He knew the truth. Mercy from a monster isn't a gift. It's just the appetizer before the torture. She moved like a nightmare. Claws tearing the air. Karen took the hits. Body rattled. Grit firm. To anyone watching, he looked like a victim. A boy trying to hold back a tidal wave of darkness. But that was the lie. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was calculating. Measuring the distance. Learning the rhythm of her pride. He took the damage for a reason. To lure her into the kill box. Then, the beat dropped. The demon realized too late. There was nowhere to run. Karen didn't just dodge. He forced a door open, where there was only a wall. His blade flashed blue. Biting. Carving through shadows. Precise violence. Turning her own speed against her. Recognition hit her eyes. Amusement died. Shock took its place. She knew that sword. Diltedian. The devouring blade. Karen didn't need to speak. The sword answered for him. It wasn't just cutting. It was eating. Every ounce of dark mana she poured out just made his strike heavier. She had handed him the weapon to kill her. Drained. Broken. The barrier shattered. The knights and mages finally rushed in. Weapons drawn. Useless. Late. Always late. But Karen had already figured it out. The thing in front of him wasn't real. Just a puppet. A hollow projection for a coward hiding in the shadows. Even if she had help inside the palace, the real body was miles away. She started to fade, spitting a final curse. Something about a reunion beyond the North Sea. Dragging the king's name into her filth. Karen didn't let her finish. One final surge. He scattered her essence to the wind. Silence returned. The base tenders woke up to the horror. Whispering about the sixth prince. About magic. They couldn't reconcile the boy they knew with the monster that saved them. The adrenal line crashed. Only pain remained. Karen stumbled. The toll was due. But he didn't hit the floor. Hands caught him. Leo. Playing the concerned alley. But look closer. That glint in his eye wasn't worry. It was calculation. He wouldn't let Karen fall. Not while the tool was still useful. He pulled out a vial. World trees do. Gold couldn't buy this. A treasure fit for kings. Poured down the throat of a mad dog. Leo called it an investment. Ensuring his asset didn't break before the payday. He treated the priceless elixir like water. Buying a soul is just a transaction. After all, it worked. The mana stabilized. But Leo didn't have time for a slow recovery. A swift strike to the neck. Hair on went limp. Efficient. Cruel. Leo ordered the brother to summon the dupe. The stage was set. He knew exactly what seeing Karen like this would do. The palace didn't offer thanks. The knights surrounded the sixth prince, branding him a suspect in the attack he just stopped. Leo didn't fight back. He saw this coming. He offered his hands. Walking into the cuffs. His innocence wasn't a shield. It was a weapon he'd use later. As they dragged him away, Leo looked back. The gamble was done. Now came the collection. He left a message for the dupe. A receipt for the debt. He walked into the dark with a smile. The game was just getting started. Outside, the sky wet. The heavy doors swung open. The temperature in the room dropped. Duke Reston. He didn't bow to the crown prince. He looked at him with the weight of a man who owned armies. He cited the ancient pact. The duty to purge invaders. But loyalty has a price. Before the crown. Before the politics. He claimed his blood. He would attend to his grandsons first. It wasn't a request. It was a command. And in that moment, even the storm held its breath. The memory always tastes like iron. To us, the hour the sky bleeds. We were standing on the wrong side of history. The armies of Grand Ducalo were marching, and the kingdom had already lost its soul. Kiryu stood next to me. He was shaking. He tried to hide it with jokes, asking if I was scared. I lied. I told him I was holding back, that I was stronger than them. It was a lie we both needed to survive the next 10 minutes. Kiriwa knew the truth. The Emperor was mad. The black magic we wielded was a curse. If we survived this, we would be hunted like dogs until our lungs gave out. Run, he said. Flee before the capital falls. I looked at the horizon. The life of a fugitive. Running. Hiding. Starving. My entire life, I had been a tool. A weapon. A slave to the will of others. I had never made a choice. Dying here. Standing on this wall. That was the first thing that was truly mine. I'm staying, I said. My choice. First and last. Kiriwa stared at me. He sighed, the sound of a man accepting the absurdity of fate. Foolish, he muttered. Then he drew his blade. If that's your loyalty, I'll walk the path with you. We died together in that red twilight. Two broken men bound by the only pure thing left in a rotting world. But death didn't stay. The crimson sky dissolved. The cold, sterile blue of the ducal estate rushed in. The silence of the grave was replaced by the nervous shuffling of imperial guards. I was back. Pain was the anchor. My body was broken, stitched together by magic and bandages. Emmy was there, sharp-tongued as ever, using anger to mask her relief. My brother sat nearby, pale as a ghost. Where is the sixth prince? I asked. The answer was grim. Arrested. But grandfather, the duke, he had already moved. Teleported instantly. Burning a fortune and resources just to make a point. The Duke of Reston waits for no one. The door opened. The air in the room grew heavy, crushing the lungs. Grandfather entered. He didn't look like a relative visiting a sick. He looked like a king inspecting a damaged asset. Sit, he commanded. His eyes swept over me. Cold. Discerning. He didn't ask if I was in pain. He stated a fact. 5 oceans. He saw it immediately. The mana inside me had expanded. I told him the truth. To stop the incubus, I tore my own pathways open. I used the 5th form, Maelstrom. A technique I had no business wielding. A desperate imitation of power. Foolish, he said. He was right. Hasty desire for power always brings disaster. I reached for the sword, before I was ready. Then came the judgment. Upon return to the Azure Sea Fortress, you will be confined. 4 years. No external activities. Solely training. It sounded like a prison sentence. To me, it sounded like a forge. I accepted without hesitation. I realized something. I told him. I am still lacking. I paused. And the demon. Before it vanished. It left a message. It said it would be waiting for me beyond the North Sea. The temperature in the room dropped absolute zero. Grandfather's gaze hardened. You are not yet worthy of knowing what lies beyond those waters. He slammed the door on that truth. Buried it under the weight of his authority. Now, the matter of the debt. The 6th prince had used the dew of the world tree to save me. A treasure worth a kingdom. But in doing so, he violated the ancient pact. Royals cannot learn magic. Grandfather's delusion was elegant. Ruthless. The 6th prince will be placed under the surveillance of the Sea Wave Knights. My brother gasped. He tried to protest, to say the prince was only helping. Grandfather cut him off. He had no patience for sentiment. As the duke left, my brother looked at me, confused. He saw a punishment. I saw the board. Don't you get it? I asked. Grandfather wasn't imprisoning the prince. By assigning the Sea Wave Knights to surveil him, our family had just become his personal army. It was protection disguised as imprisonment. Exactly what the prince needed. I smiled. The pieces were moving. I asked Emmy to take me to the Imperial Guard headquarters. She looked at me with suspicion. She could hear the gears turning in my head. I gave Zirez a thumbs up. A little gesture of defiance. He sighed. He knew trouble followed me like a shadow. They didn't understand. I wasn't plotting chaos. I was preparing. The 4 years of confinement would not be a cage. They would be a chrysalis. And this time, when the sky turns red, I will be the one holding the pen that writes the ending. Outside the walls, the capital cheered. Inside, the air was heavy enough to crush a man. My uncle's fist hit the table. The wood groaned. He screamed about near-death experiences. His voice bounced off the cold stone walls. But my father, the man named Fail, he didn't blink. To him, the rumors were noise. The only truth was sitting right in front of him. The son he threw away was now the center of the world. Fail looked at his brother. Dead eyes. No emotion. He finally understood. The intelligence he prided himself on was useless. The monster I had shown my teeth to wasn't my uncle. It wasn't Raphael. It was him. My uncle stormed out, demanding responsibility. My father just sat there. Silence. The realization settled over him like a funeral shroud. I wasn't a nuisance to be managed anymore. I was the obstacle. Maybe even more dangerous than the heir apparent. Left alone in the candlelight, he reached for the sphere. Agent Tails. A shadow in the network. The agent wanted a meeting. For the family, he said. Tail agreed. He stared at his own face in the glass. He was already writing the script. The ultimatum. Stand by his side as a dog. Or stand against him as an enemy. He didn't know it yet. But I had made my choice a long time ago. While the old men plotted my death, I sat in the dark. A storage cellar. Cold damp air. And the soft blue glow of the world tree dew. A treasure humans aren't supposed to touch. Only elves. I didn't care where Revelio found it. I just drank it in. The energy didn't fight me. It melted into my mana. Smooth. Potent. I made a mental note. Ask for more next time. I walked out of the dark. And ran into a wall of gil. Leo. My brother. Standing guard with a sword in his hand. He jumped when he saw me, stammered something about the master's orders. Take care of him. I left. Called it touching. But his eyes. They were desperate. He knew the gap between us. He knew he was weak. But he stood there, voice trembling, swearing that he would block a blade for me, even if it was just once. I didn't turn around. And no, that was all I gave him. Behind me, I heard him wiping his face, resolving to chase a shadow he could never catch. A fool, but a useful one. We walked. The Imperial Guard training grounds. Leo looked around, confused. Why here? Training is private. You don't sharpen your claws in the lion's den. I smiled. Obvious, isn't it? We're here to train. Inside. Knight Xeras. Trainee and me. Waiting. Xeras was calm. He knew the plan. Annie was different. She looked at me like I was a disease. Suspicion dripping from every pore. Why spar here? Why now? With all the political knives out. She asked for a reason. I decided to give her one. I walked to the rack. Past the steel. Picked up wood. A toy sword. I turned to her. I made sure every soldier in the room could hear me. I want to see if you have the skill. To follow the knight you admire. It wasn't a request. It was an insult. A pampered noble testing a guard in her own backyard. The soldiers muttered. Offended. Angry. Good. Ami Ultra. I challenge you. She bowed. She accepted. But her face was twisted with irritation. Xeras just watched. He knew what I was. The others. They just saw a lamb walking to the slaughter. Stone pavement. 2 figures. Attack first, I said. Don't hold back. She didn't. She lunged. A wooden blade swinging with enough force to crack his skull. No hesitation. Pure aggression. I didn't take a stance. I just flicked my wrist. Wood met wood. She expected a collision. Strength against strength. She hit a ghost. My blade deflected hers with 0 effort. Precision. Not the harangue style. Something heavier. Something imperial. The shock hit her face instantly. She realized she was out of her depth. I looked into her cold eyes. My turn. And moved. To her, I simply vanished. Distance closed in a heartbeat. My blade arcing down. She saw it. Her brain registered the threat. But her body. Too slow. Panic set in. She couldn't block it. Thwack. Wood struck flesh. The sound rang out across the grounds. Lesson delivered. She hit the dirt again. I looked down at her. No pity. Just the cold calculation of a teacher. Mercy in training is a death sentence in reality. The battlefield doesn't pause to let you catch your breath. Get up. She was already moving before the command left my mouth. That stubbornness. It was the only weapon she had. She came at me again. Desperate. But desperation makes you predictable. I sidestepped her clumsy lunge. I struck her down. Simple. Too simple. I lectured her while she struggled to rise. An attack based on luck is suicide. If you die without taking the enemy with you, your death is worthless. And everyone behind you falls too. Harsh words. But she absorbed them. She felt the weight. High above, the Night's Watch, Leo, Jerez. They were trying to dissect the anomaly in the yard. They looked for the signature of my family, the Herring sword. They looked for the Imperial sword. They found neither. They found a bastard child of both. A style forged from the memories of a past life and the limitations of a young body. They sensed the dissonance. The monster hiding in the skin of a child. And me kept rising. It kept putting her down. To the uninitiated, it looked brutal. But the Night saw the truth. I wasn't breaking her. I was tempering her. And she, through the bruises and the dirt, she was smiling. She was learning that pain is just the price of power. A final tap sent her sprawling one last time. She lay there, grinning at the sky. She'd managed to graze my guard. That was enough. I turned my back on her. My eyes swept the gallery. The Imperial Guard. The so-called elite. Shifting their weight. Avoiding my gaze. Terrified of losing face against a kid. Disappointment didn't cover it. I called them out. I asked if their reputation was so fragile that a spar would shatter it. One man stepped forward to salvage their pride. A commander. He wore arrogance like armor. My men are too busy defending the palace for this, he sneered. I'll teach you, Marcel. He thought he was being gracious. He didn't know he was stepping into a trap I'd set the moment I picked up a blade. I pushed him. Put away the wooden toys. Use real steel. The air in the training ground froze. Wood breaks bones. Steel takes lives. He hesitated. But the eyes of his peers were on him. Jerez remained silent. The rules of the estate were absolute. What happens on the ground stays on the ground. Ryuk agreed. Confident that his experience would protect him from a 13-year-old boy. He stood before me. Sword drawn. First move is yours. Opal. And fatal. I didn't hesitate. I didn't hold back. I unleashed the mana. To him, it must have felt like a dam breaking. The sheer volume stunned him. He saw the Herring sword in my stride. A tidal wave of pressure that forced him to abandon his arrogance. He realized too late. This wasn't a lesson. It was a fight for survival. He saw an opening. Or rather, he saw what I wanted him to see. He thought I'd overextended. Left my balance exposed. He lunged, a smile creeping onto his face. I smiled back. It was a lure. I shifted. The power of the Herring ended. The fluidity of the Imperial sword began. I slipped past his guard. I broke his stance. My blade bit into him. A shallow cut. But it shattered his reality. Ryuk staggered back. Mind racing. He recognized the movement. The Imperial sword. The technique of the very family he served. Sabina, watching from the stands, realized it too. They weren't looking at a prodigy anymore. They were looking at a monster who could steal their own techniques in the heat of combat. I was facing a commander on equal footing. And I was winning. Ryuk's face changed. The condescension vanished. Replaced by the cold clarity of a warrior facing a lethal threat. He acknowledged me. I will use my full power. Killing intent rolled off him. Sharp. Distinct. His sword began to glow. Fierce, fiery energy. Moonlight. A technique from history. He intended to crush me completely. He thought this display of power would intimidate me. He didn't know. I had been waiting for exactly this. Ryuk stepped into the trap with a smile. He unleashed the sixth form. Moonlight. To the crowd, it was a terrifying display. A searing crescent of fire designed to erase everything in front of it. He warned me to move. He thought he was being merciful. He thought he was the predator. I didn't move. I met fire with water. Fifth form. High tide. Blue aura surged to meet the red. I wasn't trying to match his power. I was dissecting it. I had seen the true moonlight in a past life. Ryuk's version was a distortion. A clumsy imitation. My blade slipped through the cracks in his mana. I severed the flow. I turned his own momentum against him. The collision was instant. The result was absolute. Ryuk stumbled back. Blood dripped from his shoulder. His mind couldn't process the reality. He muttered about a fake, questioning the very foundation of his life's work. Sabina screamed my name, but the danger was already gone. The killing intent that choked the arena evaporated, leaving only a heavy, confused silence. Ryuk grabbed me. His composure shattered. He demanded to know who taught a child to dismantle a commander of the Imperial Guard. His desperation was palpable. I just engaged with a simple apology. I acted like a kid who got too excited during a spar. A calculated lie. I needed him humbled, not broken. When he pressed for answers, I turned the question back on him. I gave him the truth no one else dared to speak. His moonlight was cluttered, full of fake moons, wasted movement, and impure force that diluted the technique. Lecturing the master was a gamble, but Ryuk wasn't rotten, just misguided. He bowed his head. He thanked me. In that moment, the hostility of the Imperial Guard fractured. I had turned an enemy into a student. I left him with one final order. I pointed to the red-haired woman. Annie, do not let Aragim rot away. He understood immediately. I was securing her future, even as I lost my own. Ryuk admitted complete defeat, both in swordsmanship and spirit. He asked for a rematch. Unfortunately, I said, let's meet again in 4 years. The sentence was already decided. For the chaos it caused, for breaking the hierarchy, I was confined to the duchy. 4 years of isolation. To them, it was a punishment. To me, it was necessary preparation time. I left Ryuk standing in the wreckage of his pride, waiting for the monster I would become when I returned. As I walked toward my cage, the consequences of my actions rippled upward, to the highest seats of power. In the heavy air of the palace, my grandfather, Ducalo, sat across from the crown prince. The topic was the dark mana he exposed, the body of the daughter found on the outskirts, the vessel the succubus had stolen. The Dai's patriarch pleaded innocence. My grandfather didn't care for excuses. A demon had infiltrated the palace. His grandsons had nearly died. The sleeping beast of the Reston family had been roused, and his rage was cold. Crown Prince Yorn trembled. He remembered his father's warning. Make absolutely sure you never anger Duke Hallow. My grandfather played his hand. He announced that 4 squads of the Herring Knights would occupy the Imperial Palace. Under the guise of protection, he declared the investigation would be thorough, sparing no one, not even those with royal blood in their veins. The Crown Prince realized it too late. The balance of power had shifted. As the moon rose over the capital, the realization settled in. The peace that lasted for 50 years was over. I had seen to that. The night hung heavy. A silence bought with the promise of violence. Inside the mansion, 2 powerful men nursed wine that looked too much like blood. Duke Hao, and the head of the Reston family. It had been years since they shared a drink. The air was thick with unsaid grievances. Old alliances were being forced to shift. They spoke of the purge, the necessary cleaning following the attack. The Duke was calm. His voice carried the weight of iron. He declared the Reston family would take charge. It wasn't an offer. It was a command. But when he named the man who would lead the slaughter, the air in the room froze. Pale. The name dropped like a stone. The in-law was rattled. He knew Pale's capabilities better than anyone. He knew why tradition kept that man bound in Xian Hesan, why they kept the beast in a cage. But the Duke was resolute. Among his sons, Pale was the only one suited for the brutality to come. The in-law tried to refuse. He cited principles. A feeble shield against a storm like Hallow. The Duke poured more wine. The liquid cascaded into the glass. He spoke of the attack that nearly claimed Karen's life. He wasn't asking for political maneuvering. He was asking a father to unleash a monster to protect his son. Please help him. The Duke's eyes glowed. Terrifying intensity. A plea that offered no choice. The in-law relented, defeated by the logic of survival. But he had one question left. Will Karen stay in the capital? The Duke swirled his glass. Karen will return to Qian Hesan and enter 4 years of confinement. I knew what those words meant. It wasn't imprisonment. It was a chrysalis. The boy was being sent away to be forged into something harder. Something that could survive the war I knew was coming. While the elders plotted the board, Karen moved through the capital, tying up the loose ends of his temporary freedom. He stood in a tailor's shop, warm light belying the cold path ahead. He ordered clothes for a coming-of-age ceremony he was not yet guaranteed to reach. Quiet confidence. Almost unnerving. The door burst open. Emmy stumbled in. Green hair. Looking like she had been chewed up and spat out by a beast. Yet she grinned. She had been beaten in a duel. Like a dog, she said. But she was still standing. She spoke of paying back debts. Of receiving an official appointment. She mentioned Sir Ryuk would train her. then quickly corrected herself. Duke Hallow had agreed to be her patron. She was climbing the ladder, unaware that the rungs were slippery with blood. Karen looked at her. That detached, dead gaze. "Come to Cheonghye-song," he said. "When you reach the 6-star level." He promised to teach her moonlight. And he promised to be harsh. It was a mercy, really. In this world, kindness killed. Harsh lessons kept you breathing. Karen turned to leave. The tailor, Ruan, stopped him. Hands trembling. He presented a small box. Inside lay a red brooch, glowing faintly. It had belonged to Sir Kane. Ruan had repaired it. Now, seeing the ghost of the fallen knights superimposed over the living boy, he had to pass it on. Objects have their rightful owners. He saw the same seal in Karen's eyes. Karen accepted the inheritance without fanfare. He asked if it suited him. The tailor could only smile. The dead were nodding in approval. Karen stepped out into the street. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The anonymity was gone. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. The boy who beat Sir Rhea. The next knight commander had fallen to him. The capital loved a winner almost as much as they loved the spectacle. He had become a celebrity. A dangerous status for someone trying to disappear. The sun began to set. Long shadows across the park. Karen met with the 6th Prince, Levilio, and Sir Hugo. A gathering of dangerous potential. Hugo, the long-haired royal, looked at the pair of them. The madman of the imperial palace. And the mad dog of Cheonghye-song. He felt a wave of dizziness. A volatile combination. Levilio wore his fox-like grin. Yellow eyes glinting. Far too relaxed. He teased Karen. Draped an arm over his shoulder. The casual arrogance of someone who thought they held the leash. He thanked Karen. Claimed that thanks to him, he no longer had to worry about dying in the palace. A transaction concluded. Karen had removed the threat. The prince was free to maneuver. 4 years, Levilio said. His voice bright. He'll be looking forward to the you'll go even crazier in 4 years. He shook Karen's hand, offering a blessing that sounded more like a curse. I hope you become the biggest bastard in the imperial palace too, Prince brother, Karen replied. Levilio walked away, surrounded by guards, convinced he had won the game. He didn't see the look in Karen's eyes. He didn't understand. He hadn't hired a servant. He had merely pointed a weapon in a different direction. Karen stood alone. Twilight deepened. The capital was behind him now. Ahead lay Cheonghye-song. And 4 years of darkness. He didn't look back. He didn't look afraid. A smile touched his lips. Sharp. Bold. The confinement began now. When he emerged, the world would bleed. I knew it. And looking at him, he knew it too. The capital faded into the distance. A nest of vipers in the rearview mirror. Leo stared out the window, face pale, hands shaking. He was finally realizing the truth. The gap between his training and the monsters out here was an ocean. He was learning the first rule of survival. We are prey. They sat across from him, unbothered. Sir Duras rode with us, complaining about rules. But his boredom was a mask. Suddenly, the air sharpened. A sliver of killing intent. Invisible. Needle thin. It pricked against my skin. I reacted instantly. Duras smiled. He saw the reflex. He saw the fire tempered in the capital. Behave, he warned. Before the confinement starts. He spoke like it was a prison sentence. He didn't know. That darkness. That isolation. It wasn't a punishment. It was the forge I needed. We stopped in a trade city. A place graced by coin, not blood. Aaron Rohan was waiting. A man wearing his father's title like a costume that didn't fit. He offered food. He begged for favors. I walked right past him. I had pieces to move on the board. In the shadows of an alley, Julia led the way. Lady Poina. The elf sat with that regal indifference. Beautiful. Cold. She thanked me for saving Rio. She called it gratitude. I knew it was a transaction. She handed over a box of rare wine. Watch over him, she said. I took it. Not for friendship, but because a debt owed by an elf is a dangerous currency. By morning we were at the station. Rohan was back, buzzing around like a fly. He walked us through the workshops, boasting about crystals my family paid for. He handed me a mana stone. Blue. Thumbing with power. High quality. In my past life, I would have killed for this. Now, I just suppressed the urge to smash his teeth in. Jurors apologized for my silence. I didn't bother. The train carried us home. Cheonghae-song. The spires cut the sunset like knives. A fortress for the living. A tomb for the weak. Inside, the mask slipped. A mother. I ate it. Relief. Tears. For a second, we were just a family. My father failed stood there with a gentle smile. In back, I said. He looked at me. Kind eyes. A good man. In this world, that was a failed fact. 2 weeks of silence passed. Then the summons came. I stood in the family head's office. Night. The old man sat behind the desk. The air felt like heavy water. The sentence was delivered. 4 years. Confinement. Total isolation. Designed to break a mind, or build a monster. I didn't blink. I accepted it. I needed the time. I needed the dark. My uncles, Hugo and Leon, smirked, satisfied to see the trash taken out. They turned to leave. They thought the show was over. Wait. The family head spoke. One sentence. From today, the family's diplomacy belongs to fail. The silence shuddered. Hugo and Leon spun around. Panic. Rage. They pointed at my father. He has no mana. They screamed. He is weak. To give power to the powerless. It was madness. An insult to the bloodline. The family head didn't flinch. He slammed his hand on the desk. Boom. Blue mana erupted. A crushing wave. It sucked the air out of the room. It forced their mouths shut. The sheer weight of a predator silencing the pack. Unprecedented problems require unprecedented solutions. He growled. Who secures our gold? Who do the nobles trust? Not the warriors. The man without magic. The pressure in the room focused on a single point. My father. Phil, the head commanded. Take the authority. Take the responsibility. My father stood there. Sweating. Trembling. Crushed by the old man's stare and his brother's hate. He was terrified. He had lived a lifetime in the shadow of his own inadequacy. But he did not look down. I will, he stammered. Then, he found his voice. I accept. The choice was made. The hierarchy shifted. I watched them all. The confinement was waiting for me. But the real war had just begun right here. The air in the hallway was heavy. Suffocating. Hugo and Leon stood before me. Their eyes scanning for a crack in the armor. They asked about my injuries. Polite words. But I saw the calculation underneath. They were wondering if the rumors were true. If the blood of the main family finally had fangs. Leon dropped the mask first. The bandit slayer. She didn't care for pleasantries. She wanted to measure her blade against mine. She asked for a spar. Her voice trembling with arrogance. I remembered her differently. In the past, she was a dull blade. Unused to resistance. But here, she was eager to cut. Hugo hesitated. Citing rules. Permissions. I didn't let him breathe. I accepted. And I raised the stakes. Wooden swords are for children. If you want to test me, we use real steel. The color drained from Hugo's face. He realized I wasn't playing a game. He looked for Sir Gareth to save him. But the night was far away in the northern sea. No one to stop us. The path was clear for violence. Until a heavier shadow fell over the corridor. My father. His presence demanded silence. Immediate. Absolute. He didn't look at me with the warmth of a parent. He looked at me with the cold eye of a merchant. Checking his inventory. He ordered us to follow. Inside the solar, he addressed the others first. Acknowledging their rising fame. Then cutting them down. Warning them that even a high tower can collapse in an instant. He didn't know he was predicting his own future. He didn't know I would be the one to kick the foundation out from under him. Then, he turned to me. The voice shifted. Dripping with manufactured warmth. Talking of ceremonies. Of preparations. When the door closed, the mask slipped further. Desperation revealed. He claimed to see me as a son. A clumsy attempt to bridge years of neglect with a single sentence. He asked for my trust. He asked for an alliance. I looked at this man, thinking he was securing a pawn. So I gave him the lie he wanted to hear. Of course I will. It costs nothing to promise loyalty. To a walking corpse. 2 years. Gone in the blink of an eye. The city transformed. Under the surface, I had pulled the threads. A stagnant outpost became the beating heart of the north. Scaffolding climbing the walls like a V. Streets roaring with industry. The world called it the miracle of Count Feel. But they didn't see the strings. They didn't see that every coin flowing into this city was a brick in the fortress I was building for myself. Baron Rohan stepped off the train, clutching a gift box, eyes searching for a child. He found a young man who had outgrown him. In stature, in vision. He greeted me with the familiarity of an old boss, unaware the dynamic had shifted long ago. He looked at me and saw a kid, unused by my maturity. I let him think that. I guided him through the bustling streets, playing the part of the dutiful son, leading him exactly where I needed him to be. My father's study, thick with the scent of old paper and new anxiety. He welcomed the Baron, but his mind was elsewhere. The magic stone business, the cornerstone of his ambition. It was stalling. He had the stones, but not the hands. The empire hoarded technicians like gold. My father saw a dead end. I saw an open door. Look outside the empire, I said. The southern kingdoms were burning. A brutal war. War creates refugees. And among refugees, there are always desperate men with valuable skills. I proposed we bring them in. Safety for expertise. A simple transaction. Lives. For labor. My father hesitated. He worried about politics. About persuasion. He needed someone with the status of the main family to lead the extraction. He looked at me. But I was bound to the estate. I couldn't go. But I never intended to go myself. I suggested my cousin, the drifter, freeloading on the family's dime. It was time he earned the air he breathed. Dawn set. The train platform. Steam swirling around our legs. Cold and damp. My cousin stood before me, dressed for travel, looking like a man marching to the gallows. He was terrified. He saw this as a punishment, a death sentence. He spoke of our last farewell. I smiled at him. The smile of a sculptor looking at a rough block of stone, knowing the pain required to shape it. Come back stronger, I said. Don't get hurt, or it'll kill you myself. It wasn't a joke. I needed him sharp, hardened by the horrors of the South. The train pulled away, carrying my unwitting agent toward the war. A cold gaze hit my back. A woman passed by, face like stone. She didn't speak. She didn't acknowledge the son of the man she despised. It didn't matter. I watched the train disappear into the twilight, red taillights fading into the dark. Your son will become the pride of Cheonghee-son, I thought, and he would do it entirely thanks to me. The pieces were moving. The war in the South would provide the fuel. My family would provide the fire. All I had to do was watch them burn. The wooden door was the only thing separating the annex from the world. For 4 years, it had been a seal. Inside, silence. Outside, a servant hesitated in the hallway. He could feel it through the timber. The heavy, suffocating pressure of a predator waiting to be released. When the servant finally knocked, his voice trembled. The head of the house was calling. I opened the door. The servant flinched. He didn't see the young master anymore. He saw something dangerous that had been allowed to fester in the dark. He was right to be afraid. The boy who entered that room was dead. The man walking out was preparing for a war only he could see coming. I found my father in his study. A glass of liquor in hand. The weight of the continent on his shoulders. He didn't look at me with pride. He looked at me with the cold calculation of a merchant assessing a liability. The world outside was collapsing. Demonkind rising. The empire shaking. He was trying to hold up a rotting structure. He didn't know the foundation was already gone. He brought up my Manhwa, the clear blue aura, the 6th rank. In the history of our bloodline, only the founder had reached this height so young. He called it impressive. I called it the bare minimum. This wasn't power. It was just the admission ticket to survive what came next. He asked if I was ready. I told him the truth. If I wasn't, he never would have opened that door. This wasn't a reunion. It was a transaction. I demanded to leave. The estate was a cage. I had outgrown it. He agreed too quickly. He was relieved to ship a volatile explosive away from the center of his power. I asked for my payment. The proxy certificate. Money earned from a mission 2 years ago. He handed it over, trying to frame it as fatherly benevolence. I took it without a word. It wasn't a gift. It was fuel for the fire I was about to light. He tried to lecture me then. Tried to play the patriarch. But the door crashed open before he could finish. Ulrich Schlister, the third elder. He burst in like a storm. In a past life, he was a tragic figure bound by loyalty. Here, he played the fool. The eccentric uncle. Loud laugh. Brushing grip. Calling me little grandpa. He acted the buffoon to lower everyone's guard. But his saw the eyes. Sharp. Alert. He hadn't come to interrupt. He had come to deliver orders. He slapped a scroll onto the table. A mission decided unanimously by the elders. Anonymity in this house meant one thing. The job was too dirty for anyone else. The target was in the south. The border between the Chaos Kingdom and the Holy Kingdom. On paper. A monster subjugation. In reality. A ghost hunt. Kyria 8. The name froze the air in the room. A member of the legendary death squad from 50 years ago. History said they died in the Imperial Palace. My father and uncle revealed the ugly truth. They hadn't died. They were spared. Preserved by the Dark Emperor's mana. Kept in the dark as secret weapons. Now, one had gone rogue. Kyria had vanished into the south. This was a cleanup operation. I was to hunt monsters on the surface, and track down a living weapon that should have been dust half a century ago. Ulrich warned me. The Holy Kingdom was swarming with zealots. If they found a dark mana surveyor, it would be a political disaster. I took the mission with a smile. Dangerous. But it was my ticket out. The train ride south felt like a tear between dimensions. The landscape blurred outside the private cabin. I thought about the swordsmanship I knew. The threads were connecting. Luke's style came from Kyria. The past was weaving a noose for the unwary. My sword spoke up. The ego weapon that never knew the value of silence. It nagged me about the Holy Kingdom. I told it the plan. Entering as a noble was suicide. I would go to tea. Wash my identity clean. Become a mercenary. An aimless blade for hire was safer than a duke's son. The sword shifted its attention. It noticed the parting gift from my father. A small blue jewel. To a layman, a gemstone. To the sword, potential. It mocked my ignorance and told me to pour mana into it. I visualized the form. I pushed the energy. The jewel erupted. Liquid darkness flooded over my skin. It hardened instantly. Midnight blue steel plates. Cabana. Rails armor. Ancient technology capable of shifting shape at the user's will. I flacked my hand. The gauntlet moved like a second skin. Magnificent. The sword preened. Taking credit for the discovery. I let it talk. I stood in the rattling train car, clad in the armor of a lost age. Heading straight into a region burning with fanaticism. The family thought they were sending a problem away. They didn't realize what they had done. They had just let the wolf off the leash. The South was going to plead. And I would be there to guide the flow. The armor of a lost age locks into place. The wolf of the Reston family. Finally off the leash. He moves forward. Straight toward the ghosts of his past. Thank you for following Karen's journey. To birth. Revenge. If you want to see more stories like this, like, subscribe, and let us know your favorite moments in the comments below.